Hey there folks and friends, Connecting Dots here, Sunday, February 16, 2014, Fukushima Day 1073, or as you can see on the screen, 153 weeks and 2 days into this meltdown. Now, if you have already seen my special requests, great, I've got some great information anyways in this video, you may want to stick around. Now, I also have a special alert here for those of you that live in the US, special incident that just took place, still under not under control, the lockdown. And well, if you're wondering if things have gotten better, heck no, they've gotten a lot worse, and now it's getting a little bit more public with Cousteau and whatnot. But first, let's start off in Japan. Many of you may remember here the Japanese Prime Minister Abe here had sworn to the Olympic Committee, you know, we're prepared for to receive the 2020 Olympics. Tokyo was safe. Our nuclear disaster, Fukushima, is under control. And if anyone's been watching my videos here, I've put up the last couple of days on my Fukushima Day list, you may have noticed here, I should say the last couple of weeks, I've pointed out here, it's far from being under control, and we have an ongoing meltdown. We have elevated levels of cesium, strontium. You'll see here again another record high that just took place. Anyhow, back then he was talking about how everything's going to be safe. They're not safe. You will see here the next few stories coming up. Things have gotten out of control as far as I'm concerned, and we're about to go into a full-on major meltdown. It's going to be headline news coming up here, folks. But first, I think he lied. There's no doubt about it here. We found fish off the coast of Fukushima 258 times above the legal limit here. That's just a fish, and that's just the initial release. Now, he had originally told that Tokyo would be ready. I don't think so. And he also said that the cleanup would be roughly about $60 billion. I don't think so. You know, this specialist here, he's saying more about double. That's what he's saying, about double, about $120 billion. Now, what I really liked about this story as I read down here, it got into talking about the West Coast natives. I live here on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. I've been talking about the food, the radiation since day one. I'm concerned about this. It's finally hitting home to a lot of others here who were asleep at the wheel, didn't see what was coming. I posted stories way back in 2011 how even a band manager by the name of Henry had found radiation in the local water reservoir, the freshwater reservoir here on Vancouver Island. I can't remember the name of the band, but he was the band manager. He was out fishing. He'd overheard the Coast Guard leaving a message to one of the lighthouses telling them to disconnect the downspouts. And he found that oddly strange, you know, and he knew Chernobyl had been going down. So once he got back to shore, he decided to call the Coast Guard, Canadian Coast Guard, to find out what this is all about. And they said, no, nothing to worry about. It's all cool. The radiation's not there, they said to him. Well, he was smart enough, Chief Henry, or band manager Henry, he drained the local water supply, had the water tested, and sure enough, Chernobyl radiation was in his water supply. These folks here now, they're worried about the fish, folks. I hope they are. The original story here was presented in the North Shore, and what I liked about it, at least the North Shore News here, we have something official, because this one here is from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and the map shows the surface water distribution of cesium-137 from the Fukushima in 2012. Now, this is only focused on the initial release of the radioactive wastewater. It doesn't take into account the daily release of 400 tons. So we have the initial release that came out. They know the plume's coming here. They knew it was in the middle of the ocean here around 2012. Those of you who have been following my videos, I've talked how it's going to be sitting here. We have two research papers, an Australian one, German team, two different ones that came out a year apart, and they both concluded that for an elevated period of at least 10 years, the levels on the radiation on our coast, the west coast, will be higher than those off the coast of Japan. I'm concerned here, and here we're talking about, we're seeing here a physician now who's worried about they're going to have to evacuate the children out of Tokyo. He says the threat has seemed to be spreading. I'm not making up this stuff. You're having a physician here who's coming out front. I'll leave a link here to everything you see in my videos. It's all down below. But he's talking about how he's done all these examinations. He's noticed all these serious problems in the young kindergarten students. There are abnormalities in different white blood cells. A little further on here, he talks about like how people have been affected, have moved away, you know, and they get better. And then when they come back to Tokyo, it gets worse again. I don't know what to say. This is a physician. He has no money to be, you know, he's not making any money by coming out front and telling folks what's going down. You know, and Cousteau's son here is now warning Californians about the Fukushima plume. It's about time he jumps on it. You know, he talks about he's not even touching the bluefin tuna because of the pollution, which is what I've talked about. You know, in Canada here, the Canadian safety guidelines are saying that Canadians should not eat more than 1 can of tuna per year. Our food banks are giving a 1 can per month to all the poor people. So obviously, someone knows how to get rid of them, eh? Anyways, long story short here, it's in the cattle feed here. They found it. There was a story published here. That was in California dairy food feed for the cattle. Now, it goes on to talk about how the levels would have been much higher because it sat on a shelf for 9 months. It took 9 months before they got the results back or before it was tested. Now, it turns out that 9 months equals out to 37.5% into its 2.5-year half-life. I'm telling you, it's hard to get a straight answer even when you walk the line and you get things tested, right? Which is why I got my own Geiger counters. Okay, so here we go again here. Plutonium release from Fukushima, a major concern. I guess so. Plutonium, 24,000 year half-life. You multiply that by 10 or 20 before it's completely gone. I guess so, folks. And it's uncertain how far the molten fuel has eaten through the remained of the primary containment. If you saw my video, which one of Fukushima Day 1064, 1067, 1047, I can't remember which one it was. I showed how the Swiss embassy had published a warning to the residents there in Japan. The Swiss embassy in Japan had published their own images, their update on the Fukushima, what was taking place. They showed that the molten fuel had melted right through the primary containment, through the 5-foot concrete floor, and was now heading through the middle of the earth. Folks, we have a major problem here that, again, here in the U.S., unusually high radiation levels in U.S. nuclear site. They've got the guys sequestered and placed, and it could be plutonium. Again, 24,000 year half-life, folks. These guys are never happy until we're all sitting, bathing in radiation, and they can say, well, no, that's normal background radiation. It's everywhere now. Like, come on, enough is enough here. You guys are going to have to wake up, please. I'm asking, so many of you are already woken up, so I take that back. You guys are going to have to help me here with this special request I got coming on. Okay, so as you can see on this story here, they talked about around 13% of all radioactive iodine released into the atmosphere was deposited over the US and Canada. Now, those of you who are following me from the beginning here, I've talked about it, and even Arnie Gunderson went on CNN News talking about during, I believe it was a 1 or 2 month period, the people that were living in Seattle were breathing in 5 to 6 hot radioactive particles per day per person. And that's for a 30-day period, I believe it was. And people in Tokyo were breathing in 10 hot radioactive particles. So basically, those on the West Coast in Seattle, specifically, that's where the air test was done. And I'm not too far. I'm right around the corner from Seattle, so I consider myself part of that test. People in Seattle were breathing hot 5 radioactive particles. People in Tokyo were breathing in 10. It's 50% of the levels here. Folks, please, I hope you share this knowledge with folks, with other, even a professor on PBS, a consolidated mass. And that concerns me because here we have on my island here, we got UVic with Professor Jay Cullen, who's now basically saying, folks, don't worry about it, it dilutes, and he gives you a link to Woods Hole Institute with Ken Mueller, again, another New World Order shill. These folks are downplaying it all, saying it dilutes. It does not dilute. The researchers from Australian team and German team both concluded this is beelining for the West Coast. Okay, very little dispersion would take place. Okay, with elevated levels on our West Coast. What's wrong with these guys? Are not following the same headlines as we are? It seems like they got their head in a cloud somewhere else, and they don't know how to get informed on it. Anyways, the latest information here. Look at this. Record levels of cesium, 30,000 times higher than nearby wells sampled last week. Broke record that stood since last summer. Okay, folks, I'm going to run through here the rest of these things here because it's never seen before. What can I say? Okay, so here's the link. It's right here. I fill out a little letter, okay? Don't fill out. You don't have to use the same words as me, but I'm just trying to get a point across here that we have to be checking for everything. All of the seafood, the bivalves, anything that filters water, all these mussels, these clams, they'll be sucking in that radiation much more than the fish from what I see, because they're kind of like, they're water filters. Anyways, the links are down below. There's a 1-800 number right here. So if you can call that 1-800 number, you can try it, great. Here, if you live in Ottawa, you can call the local number, call the headquarters, leave them a message, tell them you want the radiation to be checked on the West Coast, all of the fish. If you don't own a Geiger counter here, you can come to my Connecting Dots 1 forum, okay? And in the forum here, there's a Fukushima link. right below here, and you can get live radiation readings. So if you don't own a Geiger counter, that's where you do it. Take care, folks. Hope